Hi everyone, my name is Joy Wu. I'm a sophomore in the Viper program. So much fun, so excited to be here. As a gardenist and also someone who just truly enjoys plants, it's so nice to tell you about my story and why super plants can genetically transform the world. And since we're talking about plant heroes, I thought it'd be really appropriate to bring in Plants vs. Zombies. So please enjoy and thank you so much for listening to my story. So what are super plants? You know, when I was a kid, whenever I walked into those stores and I'd see the really, really big strawberries or the really nice tomatoes, I always thought, wow, this is really amazing. We can transform our regular crops into something that is beyond our imaginations. So if you look to your left right here, that's an indigo tomato. And this is something that's been genetically modified to have more antioxidants. And despite the really pretty colors, this is a really significant change to the way we approach agriculture as a whole. But what are super plants? You know, you might think of golden rice, which is a really prominent example of rice that has vitamin A. And this helped save a lot of people because vitamin A deficiencies lead to premature blindness. What else can we think about? The giant strawberries. The next time you walk into a store, even at regular groceries like Acme, you'll notice that some of them have a little GMO tag. But how do we get to these super plants? What does it mean to genetically modify these crops? What we do in a laboratory setting is we transform these plants using a series of steps. So in my lab, in the Pothig laboratory, in the biology department, we first create this artificial plasmid, which is a small ring of DNA. And based on whether we want to overexpress the gene of focus or we want to cut it away, we grow it into an E. coli, which helps multiply our plasmid. Afterwards, we transfer into an agrobacterium, which is another special bacteria that also kind of infects the plants. And once our plants are flowering, we dip it in this inoculated solution, and then our next generation already has these desired traits. And another really interesting thing you can do with these super plants is that you can add a GFP, which is a green fluorescent protein, into the plasmid, so that once you have your seeds, you can zap it with UV light, and if it flashes bright green, then you know that your gene transfer worked. So what are the different classes of super plants and how can they help us? So first, we have our heroes. They have special functions to directly combat climate change. My prominent example is Arabidopsis thaliana, which is this tiny plant known as stale cress that I worked on for the past half year. It's a really amazing plant that grows really quickly and has great research applications because it has a really fast turnover rate, it produces thousands of seeds, and it fertilizes itself, so you don't even have to worry about it. But the main thing about these is that you can create a specialized function and have these plants reproduce this over a very large macro scale. So what I did was I influenced a microRNA known as miR-156. So microRNAs are these tiny pieces that regulate genes. So it's kind of like instead of directly changing the genes, we're changing the regulators for the genes. And by doing this, we're controlling how plants grow and how they mature. So imagine giving birth and your kid is already a fully functioning adult, or just staying young forever until you choose to grow up. That's exactly what we worked on. We created these super plants that could have restricted growth where they just never grew up or immediately became adults. But why does this matter? Because adult plants and juvenile plants have different functions. If you want high biomass, juvenile plants produce leaves far more rapidly, so you can have a lot more carbon sequestration in the form of biomass or for biomass energy. But if you want special medicinal leaves, or if you want more functional purposes with carbon efficiency uptake, then you want adult plants. The next class of plants is support, and these help the other plants with their function. A lot of people, when they start out with planting in their own personal gardens, they reference the three sisters, which is this process of growing corns, then beans, and then squash. And this is really cool because every single plant takes in different types of nutrients, and when you grow it in that order, they balance each other out, so your soil doesn't get too eroded and nutrient leached. The next type is defense. I know we've all been seeing on the news that there's a lot of wildfires or heavy rain, and this is causing a lot of problems with flooding. But the real importance with plants is that we can have these protections and purification for a lot of environments. You can think of mangroves or native plants helping hold on to soils to prevent flooding disasters, or even just estuaries detoxifying chemicals. Lastly, there's supply. There's so many people in the world that don't have access to food right now, but we can change that through genetically modified super plants. Imagine if you have fast-growing plants that instead of 1 year of crops, you could have 4 or 5 times more crops within a decade. Think about how many more people you could feed. You could also think about golden rice, which is helping people alleviate their blindness in places where there's malnourishment. And lastly, there's items, and these don't even have to be plants. A large focus of study right now is with PGPBs, which are plant growth promoting bacteria. And what do? They can also impart a lot of specialized function into our plants. So we're looking at drought resistance, we're looking at enhanced functionality, we're looking at soils that are specialized and specifically tailored to each plant, and that can dynamically adjust at every point in time. And this is really cool because now we're not just considering a plant, but we're considering the whole holistic environment that we can grow this plant in. So what's the impact? How can we use super plants to fight climate change? The agribusiness is huge. And it's shown from the US EPA that 24% of global greenhouse gases are found in this area. So if we can make planting a lot more efficient, we can reduce all of these greenhouse gases. And the important thing is that we don't have to get rid of all these greenhouse gases right away. But if we increase efficiency by even just 1%, you can imagine how much that would change. In terms of carbon sinks, you can have carbon cycling control. So plants are special because they take in carbon from the atmosphere through carbon sequestration and photosynthesis as they grow. So we can have this carbon trapped into this source for a while, and we don't have to deal with all the potential impacts right away. The next thing is environmental restoration. If you look on the bottom right, that's a picture of the Amazon rainforest, where 4.7 million hectares are deforested per year. And that's a really, really large number. That's an incredible amount of area. But if we have these specialized plants, we can reform that area that has been destroyed and have better soil nutrient interfaces, impart more organic matter, and lead to more succession that allows for these plants to grow better. And lastly, super plants help a lot with research because we can foster these holistically superior methodologies. We can have plants that, as we genetically understand the basis for how they grow, we can use them to impart different functionality for humans as well. As plants have been here for a lot longer than we have, and they probably will be for longer than we will be here. So I know we're all really busy people, but the next time you're walking down Locust, take a while to stop and smell the roses because they might be more powerful than you think. Thank you.